This is the inside of the Benimar Mileo 202. If I firstly move to the main control panel, I can turn the 12 volt on by firstly pressing this button here, followed by this one. As you can see, all of the interior lights have now come on. These can all be turned on and off on their own switches. Next we have the water pump button. The water pump needs to be on so we can get water out of the taps, flush the toilet and fill the boiler if it's been drained down. Next we have awning light on and off. Buttons along the bottom mainly give us information. So this first one here gives us a condition of the leisure battery. Then this one here gives us a condition of the vehicle battery. This one will let us know how much water is in the fresh tank. When the waste tank needs emptying, a red light will begin to flash next to the waste tank symbol just here. When the fresh water tank drops to the last amber, you'll get an amber light flashing here occasionally, reminding you that you're getting low on water. And if either of the batteries were low, again, you will get flashing indicators. Next we have illumination of the control panel itself, so we can dim it down and brighten it up. This indication here is just letting us know that we're currently connected to mains electricity, and the one above it will illuminate when the engine is started to indicate that the alternator is charging both vehicle and leisure battery. The only way to view this one is with these two buttons on. If I now come across to the Truma control panel for the heating and hot water, you'll see at the moment that it's displaying the time, and it's also again letting us know that we're hooked up to mains electricity. If I now press the button, you'll see a series of icons appear, and as I rotate the button, each individual one will begin to flash. So if we start with the first icon here, this is for your heating. So if I now click on it, you'll see that the heating is off, and all we do now is just rotate the button and select whatever temperature we would like it to be inside the motorhome, and it will go right the way up to 30 degrees. So once you've decided, just click on it. That will now store in, and you'll see a little flames appeared above there. That little flame just represents the heating system, and it's just letting you know you've set a parameter. Whenever the heating is actually in operation, this flame will begin to flash, and then it will continue to flash until it's achieved the temperature you have asked. If we now move across to the next icon, this one here is for your hot water, and again if I now click on it, you'll see that the hot water is off. If I rotate, we can heat hot water in eco mode, which will give us a temperature of about 40 degrees. If I rotate it again, we can heat it in hot mode, which is a temperature of about 60 degrees. And if I rotate it again, we can also perform a boost on the boiler. The boost is very handy, especially if there's going to be more than one of you having showers in quick succession of each other, or if you just want hot water extremely quickly. If you do perform the boost and the heating's running, it will turn the heating off because it needs to use the extra power. And again, the icon will continue to flash until it's achieved the temperature you have asked. If we now move across to the next icon, this one here is power source. So we are currently using, to heat the hot water, mains electricity using 2 kilowatts, indicated by the 2 lightning strikes up here. If I rotate, I can lower the power consumption to 1 kilowatt, very handy if we're on a low amp site to try and avoid tripping. If I rotate again, we can run on dual fuel if we have both power sources available, so a mixture of gas and mains at 2 kilowatts, or a mixture of gas and mains at 1 kilowatt. Dual fuel is very handy, especially in the winter months if you want to get up to temperature really quickly, it will only consume gas as it is required. And then lastly, if we have no main supply, we can just solely run on gas. The next icon is for the circulation fan for the heating. So if I now click on that, we can either run the fan in eco or high. And if I now turn off both hot water and the heating and now return to it, we can also use the fan to vent the motorhome. We have a fan speed of literally 1 to 10, and then the fan will just come on and just circulate the air around the motorhome. If I now drop to the lower icons, this first one here is for a basic timer. So if I now click on it, we can literally just set a start time and then an end time, and then we just decide what we want on within that time period. So we can say, right, we want the heating to come on at 18 degrees. We want to heat the hot water to 60. We want to be using dual fuel. And we want the fan in eco mode. Once we've done all that, lastly, timer on or off. If I now activate it, you'll see the timer icon will come up there. And now within that time period, those settings would apply. If I now return to it, I can turn the timer back off. And the next time we go in, we can then literally alter it again. Next, we have clock set. And then lastly, we have the settings menu, and within that we have offset, which is just for the thermostat just here. If you don't think it's quite correct, you can just slightly adjust it. We then have temperature, if you prefer it displayed in Celsius or Fahrenheit. Brightness of the screen, 12 or 24 hour clock. Language, index, which is more for the technicians in the workshop, it just lets them know what software it's running. And then lastly, full factory reset. From time to time, these control panels can throw up error codes. They will usually be something relatively simple. So if you're trying to run the system on main supply and you're not connected or you've tripped, it will throw up an error code. The same as if you're trying to run on gas and you haven't got any gas or the bottle's turned off, again it will throw up an error code. An error code will appear as a warning triangle just here, and you'll get a series of numbers and letters appear. If you then look in the manual or you Google it, it will then tell you what the problem is. 9 times out of 10, as long as you rectify the problem, the error code will just automatically disappear. If it doesn't, I always say then go to the warning triangle and then double click on it, and then it will sometimes say no error and disappear. If this still doesn't work, if you still have items running along the top here, just turn them all off, because the unit can assess things a lot faster when it's not trying to do lots of stuff at once. If you've done this, still no joy, I then always suggest the good old turn it off, turn it back on again. And the way to turn this unit off is just by holding the button in until it says off. If when you turn it back on, still have the error code, then I always say do the factory reset, because sometimes that's all it requires. If we just come away from the control panel for a moment and we just come across to this window here, you will see just tucked down in this corner here, there is a little pressure switch just here. So if this window is opened and you are running either heating or hot water on gas, it will turn the boiler off, because the boiler flue is just located out of the window just here, and this pressure switch just literally just pops out to cut the boiler off to avoid any carbon monoxide poisoning. If I now come to the bench seat just here and remove the cushions, and I now lift up, you will see we have storage beneath, And we also have here the battery charger. So this is what is charging both the leisure battery and the vehicle battery when we are hooked up to mains electricity. We can turn it on and off on that red button just there, but it really needs to remain on, or otherwise you won't be able to charge your batteries. Try to avoid covering it with items in this locker area, or otherwise the unit will overheat. We then have the 12 volt fuses just there, so if anything's not working on 12 volt, just check to see if you've blown a fuse. And then we have the mains trip switches just here. So we have the individual MCBs, the main RCD and the test button just there. So if anything's not working on main supply, just check to see if you have tripped. If I now move across to the other side and again remove all of the cushions. If I now just lift up here, we have the location of the Truma combi boiler. If I now just slide this section back, which is what we would do if we were going to have 2 travel seats, and I now just lift off this section just here, you'll see that we have the water pump just here, and then we also have the boiler drain valve just down here. These particular drain valves are automatic, so if the temperature inside the motorhome drops below about 3-4 degrees, this valve will automatically open up and drop all the water out of the boiler to frost protect itself. If you are going to manually drain the boiler down, firstly make sure that the water pump is turned off, and then twist this blue diamond just here. When we twist it, the blue button at the bottom will pop out, and it will then begin dropping all the water out of the boiler. If you are fully winterizing the motorhome, I also suggest that you open up all of the taps in the van, because this will release any airlocks in the system and help the drain down process. When it comes to refilling the boiler back up again, close the taps, fill up the fresh water tank, close the valve back up again, and the way we do this is just twist and push the button in to reset it, and then turn the water pump back on again, and the system will then begin to reprime itself. After a few minutes, begin opening the taps. They'll cough, they'll splutter as they force the air out. Once it's running freely on both hot and cold, close back down and the system will then fully reprime itself. If the valve has auto drained, all that will happen is the blue button will just pop out at the bottom, and all you need to do is just push it back in to reset it. If it will not stay in, it's just too cold within the motorhome, and you'll need to turn your heating on to generate some warmth to allow it to reset. The only time we're touching the blue diamond is when we are manually draining the boiler down. Top of the freshwater tank just here, so we can gain access to it just by unscrewing the cap just here, so we can then add cleaning powders etc. to it. When you have the L-shaped lounge, you use this all brown cushion, but when you are using both travel seats, remove this cushion and replace it with the one that looks exactly the same but with the cream coloured end to it. Then once all the cushions are in place, it not only will look the same, but secondly you have this part here which supports underneath the legs. Tucked down behind the driver's seat there is a switch on when it's illuminated, and this just turns the heater that's located in the waste tank on and off. So if you are using the motorhome in extremely cold climate, you can turn that switch on and it will then put some residual heat into the waste tank to avoid any frost damage. In the overhead locker just here we have the solar panel regulator. We do not need to do anything with this. It will just let you know what it's up to on the front of it. So if we have the amber light, it's letting you know that it's actually popping a charge in to either the leisure battery or the vehicle battery. If this one below it illuminates, which will be in green, it's just letting you know it's in float mode, so it's not really required. If you get the red alarm one pop up, the solar panel really does need to be looked at. And the one beneath it will illuminate if the fuse blows, and the fuse is located by just taking the front cover off, and the fuse then just sits here. Beneath the overhead locker we then have the hob, so we've got the electric hot plate just here, and this will work when we're hooked up to mains electricity, and the red light will illuminate when it's in operation. We then have the two gas rings, and they just light by pushing in, twisting around and pushing the igniter. Beneath that is the oven and the grill. Push in to the left for the oven. And then if we push into the right, we can light the grill. The cutlery drawer is just here. And then the gas isolation taps are all located just in this cupboard here. They are all labelled up. So the top one is for the fridge, the second one is for the barbecue point, then we have the hob and cooker, and lastly at the bottom we have the heating and hot water. They're all in the on position and can stay like that. I always say if you smell gas in the motorhome, go to the source and turn the gas bottle off. Microwave just here, and again this will work when we're hooked up to main supply. It's always advisable to remove the contents for travel. We have quick start and stop just here, and then we have the usual power settings, defrost just there. Beneath it is the Thetford fridge freezer, on and off just on the black square just here. This is an automatic fridge freezer, so as long as you are on A for auto, it will find the best power source it can for you. So because we're currently connected to mains electricity, it's put us onto mains with the little picture of the 2-pin plug just there. If I was now to run outside and pull the mains lead out, it would then automatically attempt to fire itself up onto gas. And then as soon as we start the engine, it will then automatically go over to 12 volt maintain to keep the fridge cold whilst on the move. As you can see, the display will disappear after a short period, but you can see that the unit's still on by the little green light just there. And to bring it back up, just tap the on off button. I can take it out of auto by pressing here, so we can manually put it onto mains. We can manually put it onto 12 volt maintain. We're going to get an error code at the moment because the engine's not running. I can manually put it onto gas, and then it will then go back to auto again. Auto is the easiest function to have it on. Temperature control, just here. And then lastly we have the unit's heater jacket on and off. The heater jacket needs to be on in the warmer months. This will then stop a build-up of condensation at the back of the unit, which would then run down and form a puddle beneath it. We have the freezer box at the top and then the fridge beneath, and because it is a very large fridge, it does have a secondary travel catch just at the bottom here. Above my head is the Fiamma turbo vent. To wind the roof vent open, just twist here. We then have on and off just here. And then by twisting we can control the fan speed. And then we have out for extraction and in for cooling. Do make sure that the blades have stopped before turning back on again, or otherwise you could damage. Do make sure that all roof vents are down for travel. Wardrobe just here. We have the infill for the lower bed just here. And tucked up here is the digital amplifier for the television aerial on the roof. We don't really need to do anything with it. Just make sure it is actually on. Install a television on the bracket just here, plug it in up here and then tune in. Storage just here. We can see the spare wheel and the jack and wheel brace just there. And then we have the washroom. So we have the shower cubicle just here. Do make sure that the shower screen is slid round and secured for travel. We then have the basin just here and the toilet. The toilet bowl does swivel all about. Open to the cassette just here. Push to flush at the back. Do make sure the water pump is turned on, or otherwise it will not flush. Level indicator just here, so this will illuminate when the cassette needs emptying. And then close back up to the cassette again on here. If this has been left open and you try to remove the cassette from the outside, it will not come out. So if you do feel resistance, just make sure that nobody's left it open. The light switch for in here is just tucked in the corner just there. The table has quite a few different functions underneath it. So this grey lever here, when snapped across, stops the table from moving about. When it's like it is now, we can then slide it in all different directions. We can also rotate the table by pulling down on this lever just here, and then we can also lower the table by pushing this across and then pushing down. The table needs to be lowered for the bed, and if you want the electric drop down bed to go to the lowest position. If we are going to make the lower bed, we need to make sure that when the table is lowered that it then rests on these sections just here. So as you can now see, I've dropped the table into position and you can see it's now resting on all of the points it needs to. Now it's just a matter of arranging the cushions. Once I've flapped this part over just here. So as you can see, these two cushions here are literally from where they were a moment ago. So we have the bit you sit on and then the backrest just there. Spin it around whichever way you prefer. Some people actually flip the cushions over. It's all down to personal preference. All the other cushions can then stay exactly where they are. Removing these gives you more room. And then lastly, we have this gap in the middle there. So to fill this, we need to take this cushion away just here. And as you can see, once you've removed it, it has this space behind it. The infill that's found in the wardrobe fills that gap up, and then it's just a matter of popping it in the void just here. And then once it's popped in, you have the large double bed. The electric drop down bed operates just up here. Firstly, make sure that you remove the seatbelt mechanism just here. Then it's just a matter of turning the bed on, so just turn the key. Now you need to be patient and make sure that all the lights have stopped flashing before pressing any buttons. If you press the buttons whilst the lights are flashing, you can sometimes confuse the bed and mess up its memory, and then it will do whatever it wants to do. If I now press the button, the bed will now descend to its first point, and then we can then pop the ladder on and then use the bed in this height here. You can pop on a cargo net, which is currently just located in the wardrobe, and the light just turns on and off just up here. And at this height here, people can still sleep beneath it. If you were going to then use the bed in the lower point, firstly make sure that all of the lights are turned off underneath here, or you do run the risk of scorching any upholstery left underneath it. And then press the button again, and you'll see that this time you have full control over how low you go with the bed. And then once it's at its lowest point, the bed can then be used. If I now press the button again, the bed will go back up again, and then in a moment it will stop, and then you will have to hold the button down to continue putting it up to the roof. It's best not to have anything on the bed because you do run the risk of it popping a fuse. And then once it's fully up, wait again for the lights to stop, turn the key off, and then just pop the clip back into place. Whilst the clip's in place, there is no power. The lights just here turn on and off just behind, so just run your hand until you find the switch. And the seats rotate round by pulling the levers just here, backwards and forwards on the bar, and they're height adjustable on the side levers.